Hello, I'm Lizzie Phillips and welcome to the Networking Diaries. Here we go. With me today, I have two lovely ladies that I'm going to be introducing very shortly. First of all, if you are tuning in on YouTube, apologies for the lack of makeup today. In fact, this kind of leads on to the reason why we have a wonderful guest with us, is I was very stupid. Now, here in the UK, because I guess I'm from the US, we call ourselves a bit of a plonker if we do something stupid. And I did something stupid in January where I decided to turn around for some conditioner, which is very dangerous, by the way, because I managed to slip up and out of the bath backwards, hitting my head and giving myself a brain injury, basically, which is the reason why we haven't had these guests on before now. I'm very excited to say. So, Ali and Susan, I'd love for you to introduce yourself, but more importantly, introduce your organisation to us.
Hi, everyone. Well, thank you for having us, Lizzie. We're so happy to be here. So my name is Gilvar, and I started a women's empowerment organization 14 years ago, actually this month, called Belive Inspire Grow. And what we wanted to help women basically become empowered. And a lot of the ways that you can do that is being an entrepreneur. And so we've been doing that and helping women in hundreds of communities across the US. And now we're global as well. We work with a lot of international women because there's so much that we have in common. And Susan, who is my colleague and has been involved in my organization for years and years, has just become on board as our president of the organization.
Susan, would you perhaps like to tell us about your good self and maybe your role as well?
Yes, well, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much. And as Tara mentioned, I am now the president of BIG, but I have such a long history. It was one of the first women's organizations that I joined when I left my 9-to-5 job as a graphic designer. Mm-hmm. And I've been part of it all the way up until when I moved to another state where I really couldn't participate in the in-person events. And then just as COVID hit and the pandemic, that's when I was able to jump back in and help with the virtual and the global, and it has been just amazing. My background is I'm a coach, a mindset and achieve coach for women in business, and I help women really bridge the gap between their personal and professional life. And I work with a lot of moms, so between their mom life and their biz life, to stop the tug of war, to create the simple and consistent self-care, to create those family boundaries while having a profitable business, right? And having fun. So that's what I've been doing the past 13 years.
Wow. I've got so many questions for you two. Be prepared, folks. So, Tara, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about how many members that you have and what really spurs you to set up. Is it, so would you pronounce it BIG or you pronounce it BIG?
We pronounce it BIG. It evolved. It just is the way that the women call it. They even call themselves the Bigettes or the Biggies, or
I like it.
They just, how women just adopt their own organizations, right? So the question was, how many people do we have? We have hundreds. We have about 500 active paying membership members, and we've had about 8,000 over the 14 years that we've had, because women come in and out. We have a lot of, like Susan, a lot of returns. And thankfully, I mean, the one good thing that came out of this pandemic is that technology lets us connect. And so a lot of our women are coming back who moved out of the region where we used to do all of our in-person events and are able to come back. So we go as far as 3,000 miles away in California. We're on the East Coast of the US, all the way across the pond over to you. We have some UK members and some Spain members and some Canadian members. And that is the one blessing of the pandemic, or at least one of the blessings of the pandemic, is that we get to bond. And our vision is to bring in thousands of women, because we need each other. We need each other to just be able to pick ourselves up on those low days and find more information. So what we like to say is we help women learn, because you're not supposed to know everything about this thing called entrepreneurship and business, right? It's always evolving. Social media is always evolving. So we want you to learn, connect, which is the community, which is what you do, a lot of networking, but really relationship building, and then evolving yourself. I mean, business for women isn't just about making money. It's about purpose and passion and leaving a legacy and doing something worthwhile and being a role model to the next generation. It's so much more than our male counterparts.
Everybody has this kind of business light bulb moment where they decide, actually, you know what, I'm going to set this up. This will be a really great product or service. What was your first light up experience? You know, how did you set up Big in the first place?
Well, I'll tell you how I set up Big, and Susan has a different answer. So there's probably two.
Oh, brilliant.
I was in marketing and public relations in my career. Then I had this thing called a baby, which changed the trajectory. And I had 2 more after that because I didn't learn the first time. No, I have wonderful children. But, you don't expect that life is going to get away of your business plans. And it does for women way more than it does for our colleagues, our male colleagues. So I stayed at home and I lost my sense of self. I lost who I was. I was on a career trajectory. I was exciting. I was traveling. I was, doing television shows and things like that and marketing. And, being a mom, being a mother changed everything because economically, it almost didn't make any sense for me for childcare to pay for childcare and go back to a job that was always going to always equal the same amount of money. And that's still a lot of the problem out there right now. So for me, what happened, I stayed out, I raised my children, but I was missing that sense of who else am I supposed to do with this life I have? And for me, I saw a bumper sticker on a teacher's car and dropping my middle child off at the middle school, and he was about 6th grade. And it said, remember who you wanted to be. And this lightning bolt was like, you're not her. You're not her. You better start getting in this game and figuring that out. And that was it for me. That's what projected me to send an email and gather women together. And that started it. But Susan has a different story because she stayed in corporate America and she had her entrepreneur light bulb go in a different way.
Yeah. So it was right after I had spent 3 months in London living and partying and not a care in the world, building up the debt, eating Subway, drinking, not taking care of myself. And then I had a light bulb moment that I had.
At the time.
I was single. When I was like, oh, I got to get home. I got responsibilities. I got to pay all this stuff out and pay all this stuff off. I have to pay my college loan. And so I came home and I was miserable. And I remember I found a job pretty quick because I use a headhunter. So within 2 weeks back of traveling, I found a graphic design job for a medical company. But I was playing victim and I was blaming everybody and everything. And I was crying and I was miserable and I was complaining that I was overweight. I was complaining that I was in debt. And I was like my rock bottom at 25 years old, right? And I felt really lost. I felt really depressed as I was going to this job. I was in this gray cube, right? So it's not London. I'm not going to, it's not the open life that I had, right? I have no windows. I have this cube and I'm doing this medical work, graphic design, which was really boring. And I just wasn't happy. And I let it, and it compounded every day that I fed on my victimhood, right? Like it just got worse. It didn't get better because I just kept complaining until one day I had this moment, this aha moment of accepting responsibility. I don't know what it was, but I was in my cube and I was like, whoa, like accept responsibility. You had an extraordinary life that so many people don't get to do. And you made all these choices. You took all these actions. That's why you're here where you are now. Now, what are you going to do about it? And so I ended up going to therapy. I ended up going to the gym. I ended up taking care of myself. And that's when I started IdentityMagazine.net, which is an online magazine, a wellness magazine for women that I used to heal and vent and share my stories because I felt so alone. And 13, 14 years ago, the internet wasn't like it is today. Yeah. And so it's amazing how much has evolved. And I happen to be kind of ahead of the trend there, which I'm never ahead of the trend. But I used that as an outlet to share to just so other people wouldn't feel alone. And that's kind of how I got started. And then 5 years after corporate, I left and I became a full-time entrepreneur, and that I was already involved in Big. And I would work in the morning. I would work at lunchtime. I would work after my job. Yeah. I would stay up all night because I was so excited. I had this new passion and this new project. And I leveraged my youth and I sacrificed spa days and spa weekends with my friends to have this different life instead of the cube
It's an
life.
unusual life, right? Not everyone gets the entrepreneurial world, right?
Yeah.
We're a unique group. But once it's ignited in us, there's nothing that can stop it.
Yeah, there's like no turning back.
No, well, that's a real. Obviously, we're going to be talking about networking later on. But one of the things that both of you kind of really resonated with me, where does that entrepreneurial spark come from? Have both of you got any family members that are in business? Or
Susan and I are different in that way. So I don't even consider myself seeking entrepreneurship. I call myself an accidental entrepreneur. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I knew that I wasn't where I wanted to be, right? I knew I wasn't who I wanted to be and where I wanted to be. I didn't know that I was going toward entrepreneurship. I sent an email out after seeing that bumper sticker to all the women in my local community that said, we're still smart. And maybe we could get together and find a way, because a lot of this was, at the time, these were all these suburban women, right, who have opted out of the workforce for the reasons similar to why I did, for motherhood a lot of times, but it's also when after a divorce, after an illness, after, taking care of your senior parents. It's not just, it's anytime women take a pause in their pursuits of their professional life to nurture other people on this planet, which is what we do for the majority of our life. And so for me, I thought that I was bringing women together who were like me, and we were going to just figure out how we could get more work or more projects locally. It really wasn't to start an organization. It was just to see what else was out there. But then what happened was, once you saw that the women needed each other in order to move forward, that without that, they were going to stay stuck. And they needed that committee, they needed the community, they needed the accountability to each other. They needed the knowledge from each other. And one woman just looked at me in 2009 in my living room when I brought these women together and said, "You've just found your new calling."
Yeah.
Like, what? And I had to take time to think about it. It wasn't a purposeful move. And then it evolved. And I don't know if I knew the vision of 13 years that I would have taken it on at that moment in that time. But you grow into it.
Yeah, I very much believe that things do happen for a reason and that there's quite often just timing to everything. So, I mean, you mentioned suburban motherhood. We haven't actually mentioned where you guys are based and where you are dialing in from today.
Yeah, we're on the East Coast of the US. I'm in New Jersey, and Susan is about an hour and a half away from me. She also grew up in New Jersey, right outside of New York City, about 45 minutes outside of New York City. And Susan grew up in New Jersey as well, but now she lives a little bit more west in Pennsylvania.
In the mountains. In the mountains.
And how is that good? So we're having a mini heat wave here in the UK. At the moment, it is currently, I don't know what 19 degrees is in Fahrenheit, but it's very warm.
That's nice.
We're having a London day. It's very cold.
Yes. Exactly. How ironic is that? Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Susan, I'm going to come onto your entrepreneurial background in a minute, and then I'll share my story. But one thing I must point out, I'm sure my listeners are going to be laughing their heads off, because I was supposed to go to New York twice during the pandemic, and then it just never ever opened, never ever happened. And I literally missed the cutoff point for when the borders opened, 24 hours. So, so I'm sure they'll be saying, I just need some form of invite to go back. That's fine.
Well, you have an invite. We're inviting you. You have an open door invitation.
I would love
we
that.
will come and take care of you in New York.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Susan, did you have, I find this really fascinating, particularly as you mentioned you were 25 when you decided to set up. So I was quite similar. So I'll tell you my story, and then it'll be interesting to see if we've got any sort of similarities in terms of family background. I went to uni in London. That's what we were talking about before we hit the old record button, and went through the marketing route, marketing design agency, which was great. But it is in marketing. I'm sure relate to this is you very much work hard and play hard, not much time for anything else. And then went and worked for Business Link Essex, which was a government funded organisation. So in the UK, there's actually used to be quite a lot of government funding to help sort of promote entrepreneurship and almost encourage it, which is one of the questions I've got for later, actually. And I thought, you know what, after being told that my contract was coming to an end, my assistant was kind of got the job, although it was cheap or anything. I decided, right, you know what, I'm going to take my own advice, working for a government organisation that promoted entrepreneurship, to set up my own networking group and marketing services. And I was only 24, and I loved it. I loved the passion of it, but I found it incredibly lonely. And I found it really quite challenging working on my own. Yeah. It got to the point where I'd worked in a large team to a much smaller team to literally on my own. And quite often when you'd maybe ask your colleague sitting next to you what they thought of something, there was nothing like that at all. And I was making really great money. I've been in quite a few awards for Entrepreneur of the Year, but I was miserable, really miserable. So I did the opposite, and I went back to work for a bit. I went to work for my dad. My dad has an engineering business, and we had 3 people, including myself, and we grew to 50 people.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was only supposed to be there for 3 months, not 3 years, and ended up being there 8 years almost. And my lovely dad one day saw that I'd kind of grown the business, grown the bit that I really enjoyed, which was networking, but it was just under his business name. And one day he decided to put my P45, which is, I don't know if you have the similar there, which is basically the document when you leave a company. So it's basically fired me and put the company registry, we'd registered the company name. So that's where Gilvar Business Services comes in, and a little note with a check to say, I think it's time that you go and do this yourself. So
you out of the nest, huh?
So it's like,
wow,
a mighty push.
I love that story. I think I've never heard, like, that's the first I've heard of like a parent doing something like that. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I don't think I would have done it otherwise. I mean, I really enjoyed it, but it was the safety net of being somebody else's. It's that drive. Well, not necessarily drive. I think you have a drive anyway. I think it's probably the push that I needed to say, actually, you know what? Something, yeah, I
heard a similar story of a woman. She was a hairdresser. She was really good at it. She was building up her business. Her father bought a building and said, "This is your building. Get to work."
Oh my gosh, so cool.
And she now has 3 successful salons in the area, and she is a true entrepreneur. But her father did the same thing at a young age. Wow. No, in the late 20s. The responsibility was, and you're going to pay the rent.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I probably just needed the responsibility actually being passed on to me.
Well,
so Susan,
staying in the same place never is growth, right?
It's true. Yeah, I don't think I would have left otherwise, to be honest.
Yeah.
I was too comfortable. So Susan, tell us a little bit more about your background.
Well, mine's a bit different. I mean, so I'm the youngest of 7. My father,
7. No, how many? Go back. 7.
Yeah, but my father was married twice. Right. So he had 4 with his first and 3 with my mom, but we all grew up together. We all lived like on the same property. So I have nieces and nephews that are pretty much like cousins because we're all the same age, right? But growing up, my father he owned some restaurants. And he dabbled in that. And then I remember him working for the factory for Tiffany. So I didn't know he was an entrepreneur then, right? I didn't know until I was older. But when I started my business, I had a partner, which I don't know if I'd be where I am today if it wasn't for her. We started the magazine together, and then it was like a year and a half later, she didn't want to do it anymore. And I remember crying for 2 weeks straight because I didn't think that I was capable of doing it by myself.
Right.
And I just said, I remember like being on my hands and knees in the floor. I was still living at home with my parents, and I'm like, what are you going to do? I was like, you can do this. You've done most of it anyway. She was just that safety net and an amazing partner to get me started. But I was doing all of the heavy lifting, right? And I knew she wasn't as into it as I was. So I was like, all right, you can do this. And so I went at that time, my brother, here's the amazing thing. And Tara knows my family history. I grew up in a non-traditional family. I mean, we had a lot of drug abuse, mental abuse, infidelity, struggles, a lot of drama to be raised up as in a family. The only stable person in my life was my mom. Thank God, right? She was always sober. She was taking care of everything. She took us to our sports. She made us dinner every night, all that. But everybody now who's living, all of my siblings that are living now, we're all entrepreneurs, except for my one sister who's a teacher. But so when I was starting this business, my brother at that time was clean and running a very successful business. And I reached out to him. I said, what do I do? How do I do this? Can you help me? So I did have that kind of guidance, but he said, you're going to figure it out as you lean in and dive in. He's like, but if you want it, you do whatever you can do to make it happen. And
yeah, that's true.
And, I just took it one day at a time, gave myself homework, one thing at a time. And I've stayed that course for all these years. I try not to get overwhelmed, and I'm like one thing at a time. I don't try to compare myself to my speed or to anybody else. I just go my pace, and I've continued to win my own race.
That's brilliant. It's really interesting that your family's all gone into business.
Yeah.
So my childhood, both my parents ran their own business. So my mum was an antique dealer. So quite often the Sundays involved lugging up loads of different antiques up different stairs while I sat in the car bored, quite frankly, while she was selling those. And my dad ran, and still does run, an engineer's company. And if I ever wanted pocket money, I would have to earn it. I would have to come up with crazy ways of getting it. And even to this day, we kind of have a bit of a giggle because my dad would say, okay, well, you can wash the car for £5. Back in the 80s, that was a lot of money. You're talking, I would say probably about $20. That's quite a lot for a kid. Anyway, so I quickly worked out that I could kind of offer everybody else's car down the road for the same money. But then I also worked out that my younger brother, who's only 18 months difference, I offered it to him for £3.50, and I was just sitting there with a cup of tea, delegating everybody to wash the car.
Brilliant.
It's a great way to do it, right?
So it's quite funny, yeah. So anyway, they I think I was very much spurred on by them, but everybody in my dad's side of the family all run their own business, whereas in my mum's, the polar difference is quite interesting. Wow. I mean, talking about entrepreneurs, Tara, have you seen and we're seeing that in our networking groups actually over here, that with COVID, obviously, sadly, people have been have been made redundant, but it's obviously opened up an opportunity for people to start their own business.
Absolutely. Yeah. So they call it I've heard it called the she-demic.
Oh, I like that.
Because it impacted women a lot more in analysis than men. And for some of it was their choice, right? I mean, poor women trying to build a corporate career while they have no childcare, while they have their toddlers crawling on top of them, trying to do their business, or even in their corporate world. I mean, I think what the pandemic did was it magnified everything good and bad in your life, right?
Yeah,
and you had to make some choices. And so a lot of women said, this isn't the life I want to live. Like Susan in the gray cubicle, in some ways, being on a Zoom call with these corporate figureheads over and over again that had no respect for the fact that you're struggling in your home, and they say, okay, well, it's not worth the paycheck. right? I have to figure out how to live the life that I'm supposed to live on this planet, because what we've learned in the pandemic is you never know when this part is over, right? And so I think women especially, who take care of their parents, who take care of the children, who take care of everybody in their community, have had made really important choices. And that has led to a lot of women saying, like Susan did, or like I did by accident, I need to find a new path, and I need a path that I make the decisions, that I'm not under the thumb of someone else to tell me what I can and cannot do with my life.
Yeah.
And it's a brave decision, but I mean, I think it's when you have, once you've tasted that, right? Once you've had the fact that you can survive economically and you can contribute a gift through your talent, and people value that, and it becomes something you can't give up anymore. Deepak Chopra, the famous, Deepak Chopra said, the difference between motivation, where you say, okay, I'm going to do something, I'm going to lose 5 pounds, or I'm going to, 5 kilos, or whatever you lose over there in the UK, you should go on a diet, or to stop smoking, or to save some money. It lasts about 3 or 4 days, right, by motivation alone. But when you are inspired, so when it hits you in your spirit, the root word of inspiration is spirit, in spirit. So when you ignite your inspiration, you can't stop it. It's ignited. I mean, entrepreneurship is really hard. Starting your own business is really hard. Some days it's really bad. Some days the numbers aren't good. But, you go to bed and you say, okay, I'm going to give this up. And you wake up in the morning and you go, can't give it up. I'm going to give it another try. Or you meet someone who says, like Susan, oh, I'll help you. Or, hey, let's connect over to the wonderful women in London who are doing similar, and see if we can get inspired. And when you keep feeding that fire, it's what keeps us going for decades. And it's the money is the fuel. Right? You have to have money, no doubt. It's what pays our livelihood. But it's not the money that we do it for. It's bigger than that.
I think that's one of the, let's move on to because that leads nicely into our networking questions, basically. So one of the things I've been looking at recently is why people join a networking group. So yes, it's to get sales. So that's the reason why they join, but actually that's not the reason why they stay.
Exactly. That is exactly true. It's almost like we have to trick them, because I mean, I compare it to, I've been talking to Susan about this. You talked about university. When you're picking your university, right? You go outside and you go, it has it's offering the courses I want to study, and it's the price tag is, the tuition is in my range, and it's in the community that I want. It's the size of the campus I want, and it has green grass, and you pick that. When you are in that university, you don't have anything to do with those things. It's about who your friends are, what your professors are, who's inspiring you, what your experience as a human being is once you're in it. But you're not going to be able to pick the choice then. You have to pick it on logical terms, but once you're in it, it's all about your emotional connection, your intellectual IQ, right? So we've learned that we have to dangle you're going to get business leads, you're going to have a community, we're going to help you with your business, come in the pool, and then what you're going to get is a community of supporters, and you're going to get affirmation, and you're going to get validation, and you're going to get not loneliness, like you said before, which is what kills all of us, sitting in a home by ourselves. So people won't put their credit card down for that. They have to logically say, I have to do this because it'll give me job leads or sales opportunities or whatever. And I wish they didn't. I feel like
they have to justify it, don't they? But
they have to justify. I think we have to educate them. I've talked to people, on the other side, and said, you're not going to understand what you're going to get from this, and they won't pay for that. But if I say I have 8,000 leads that we're going to send it in our newsletter, they'll go, here's my credit card.
One of my biggest bugbears at the moment is people saying, and I had a very large international bank book on, and then say, I didn't realize I had to pay for coming along. Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
I need feeding too.
But you know, that's a thing that women have to learn to do. And Susan's good with this too, is you have to have boundaries. You can't give away your products or services for free to your friends and think it's going to jumpstart your business. It's not. You have to have boundaries. You have to have a strategy behind discounting and a strategy behind giving away some free things. You can do that, but it has to be strategic, because otherwise what you'll do is you'll be back to square one. You'll look at it and you'll go, I'm not good at this. Why am I doing this? I'm going to go back to a job.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I believe in law of attraction. That's something I've learned with practice is if we're running a business and we want to build our businesses and our brands, and we want people to invest and buy from our products or our services, then we've got to do the same, right? Because the law of attraction really does work, especially like how you manage everything. I know the biggest thing that I've always had to clean up is money, right? The relationship with money and that conversation, respecting it, treating it well. Like when things don't go my way, but when I'm paying attention and nurturing it and loving it and having a great relationship, and then that's when it works in my favor. So I think the same thing with networking and community and just supporting each other is showing up, knowing that we want to support each other, right? And we want to believe in each other, and we want to act how we want to be received. Does that make sense? It's reciprocal. And I think we forget that.
Yeah, no one wants to be sold to. No one wants to be chased down in a room and have a business card thrown in front of their face, right? I mean, I know you use the word networking, and I know you run a networking, but I actually abhor the word.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because to me, what it does, the traditional 80s, 90s way of networking was, here's my card, give me what you have.
Oh, I still experience it today.
And when people do that, but no one evolved person wants to deal with that, right? It takes relationship building. So when we talk about networking and you use that word, I like to call it relationship building, but that's not what people call it. So just the same way we talked about it, we have to call it what it is. We have to call what they're familiar with, networking. But to me, networking, it has one key point. It is an introduction to a relationship.
Yeah, it's very true.
It is the step one to say, how can we get to know each other better? It's not, buy my stuff, because to Susan's point, no one would want to be treated that way yourself. So don't, and it's also in our organization, we say it's a give before you get place. Yeah. Trust that. Go into a room and say, how can I help you? Not how can you help me? And the law of attraction will magnet way more people towards you, to the point where once you get to that authentic relationship part of this journey, they'll say, tell me more about what you're doing and how I can now help you. And it'll magnify. If you're always on the get, you're going to watch people go.
Yeah. Well, they say when you give value, how much value are you putting out there? That's what you get in return financially.
I think it's one of my recent blogs was all about that networking is an investment, and like with any form of marketing, you'd make sure that you're getting the most from that investment. You wouldn't, you wouldn't do a Facebook ad and not actually follow up all the people that filled in the form. So it's exactly the same.
Well, like if you go into a networking event, say, I used to use this analogy. So say you're a florist and you go into a networking event and you're looking for people that have like a collaboration. So I run a venue hall, or I run a wedding planner. You're running and you're looking at the business cards and you're reading their names, right? And you see somebody that doesn't have, he's insurance guy. Oh, I don't need him, right? And you just buy him, and you don't have relationships because you think you have on the surface who your target audience is. And what you've just passed up is a man whose daughter's about to get married and has a $50,000 flower budget. And you
that get me started.
Give him the time of day. Right. So when I go into one of the reasons I used to hate traditional networking was everyone's reading my name tag.
Yeah.
Everyone's reading whether I'm of value to them.
Well,
from my name tag.
That's one of the top tips that one of our other podcast speakers noticed is particularly women's events, where we're going to mixed networking events, because they are obviously just staring down at your cleavage area. What's that all about? Yeah. So that leads us nicely on to tell us one networking top tip. So Tara, you've mentioned a great one there. Susan, have you got a networking top tip?
Yes. So what I have been doing the last several years, online especially, but now in person, is I go and I listen. I don't even introduce myself unless somebody asks me. I'm the one that's asking the questions. I'm the one being curious. I'm the one listening. I'm the one being invested in them, and if they ask me, then I present it. And it has been game changer. And I love it. And I think that's what changes, because we all go in there and we want to vomit everything that we do. We want to say we do this, and nobody really listens. And when you practice that, the other person on the other side is like, oh, I've been talking this whole time. Let me ask her about her. And it really changes. And especially online, it's really good because we're distracted a little bit. So how can you be the better listener and let them ask you? Because then they're more connected and they're more ready to listen, right? Because I think that's the ego's in the room. It's like, well, let me get this out, and nobody's really listening. But if you choose to listen first, and then when they're going to be like, oh, let me ask her, they're going to actually be listening too.
Well, that also comes across that you're more confident, much more assured. You're not feeling desperate to sell, right? Like you're all right. You're good at waiting.
Susan, there's a really good interrogation video with Chris Voss in it, who used to be the FBI interrogator. And he literally just asks the other person questions. You have to watch it. It's brilliant. But he did it at a convention over the weekend. Nobody knew about him at all, but he knew about everybody else. And when they voted who was the best person and why, they said Chris, but they couldn't tell them why. It's really interesting.
Because he focused on them.
Yeah, right? Exactly. It was really interesting. My networking top tip is one of the things that I experienced at the weekend. In fact, it's on my LinkedIn post today. This is kind of the polar opposite of what you were saying, Tara, is people that don't seem desperate. So to give you an example, my husband and I went to a farmer's market at the weekend, like a grand estate close to where I am. And there was a pizza van there, obviously selling slices of pizza. Now I'm on the PTA at my schools. I thought, great, we could get them at the summer fete. One less thing we need to do. Let's go and ask them because they're local to the school. I thought, great, win-win. Anyway, so I went over and said, look, hi, I'm Lizzie. I run the local PTA. Would be really interested in you being at the school, school summer fete. And they basically shook their heads and waved their order book and said, I'm really sorry. Well, in fact, they didn't even say I'm really sorry. They just said, we're really busy. I'd be surprised if we can fit you in.
See, yeah.
Oh, yeah, no.
No, but I don't think that's what I was saying, because that's trashing an opportunity. Right. That's
well, it's like the opposite of desperate, though. It's almost like, I don't need your business.
Yeah.
And
the pendulum swings too far in that way. I mean, I think self-assured confidence is always good, but obnoxious, I don't need you is never good.
Well, not need that. I think what was using your example of somebody that might be, that they thought that a florist isn't good, an insurance person isn't a good connection for them. My husband, we walked away and my husband said, yeah, you might run, not only do you run the PTA, you run 12 networking groups.
Well, it's like the Julia Roberts thing.
Yeah. Big mistake.
So you know what? There's another pizza place that would love the business, and you have a long standing relationship. And that's what the universe was meant to tell you, that this is not the right opportunity for you.
Yeah. I think a waffle and ice cream van might be more appropriate.
Much better. Yeah, I mean, I believe that too. When, Susan and I, when we go out now, we're trying to get partners, right? And corporate partners. And sometimes, we go down this path where it's just an endless pursuit of nothing but to come at it and realize that maybe when we think it's this person and it's not, it's because the universe is telling you it's the door next door, right? And we have to listen to where the fate is, because it's not always where you think it's going to be.
No, it's not. Your organization is based in the States. You work closely with Ali from Costa Women, but I'd be interested, one of the questions I ask is how do you think networking differs from country to country?
Well, we haven't found much difference. We've been working with Ali and Costa Women for 3.5 years before COVID. I mean, thankfully, that's how we knew Zoom before, we had to learn Zoom. And what we've learned is that, there's small cultural differences. There's small, legal differences, right? You have taxes on certain things we don't have. We have certain limitations on the way we can do things. But at its core, when you think about it, relationships, connections, trying to help other people, sharing gifts and talents, and bridging people together, I haven't found any differences. I mean, individually, of course, but that's a personality thing. But I don't think culturally.
Do you find, though, just bringing Susan into the mix? So, Susan, do you not find that the Americans are slightly better at asking or have more confidence in asking? So, okay, so in my group, most people come in and say, this is what I offer. These are my services. Almost, do you want them or not? rather than, and they always talk in a third person, but yet it's their own business. Yeah. So I just wondered, culturally, if you find any difference at all.
So I'm going to share a piece of feedback that I got back from somebody across the pond that mentioned about us. But like Tara said, I have been experiencing the same openness, excitedness, eager to learn, easy to talk to, very fun accents between all of us, right? That's like the most fun part. But what I've heard was that they love how we are very solution oriented.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And that was interesting to me. I was like, oh, I guess so, because they're like, we have compassion, we have empathy. Sometimes we cry on our meetings, right? But we're like, what are we going to do about it? How can we help you turn that around? How can we support you? Instead of all of us hang out and cry and play victim, it's like we've got the moment of compassion, but we've also got the business side. And that was interesting feedback that I had received. And I think that's really important, because I think we all have problems. We all have struggles. We all have obstacles. We all have doubts, fears, insecurities. But what are we going to do about it? What can we do about it? And how can we ask for help to get through it?
That is exactly
I think there's a misnomer. Yeah, I think that the U.S. reputation, is these like push through the room and that big mouth, loud mouth reputation.
Oh, I am loud. I'm not gonna lie.
I remember going to Europe and they go, I'd be sitting in a room and you'd hear really loud voices, and I'd hear people say, oh, they must be the Americans, right? And in that way, I think that there are definitely people that are absolutely like that in any culture. I think what Susan and I found out in this little bubble that we work in, this safe and secure bubble where we align our values with organizations like you and Costa Women that have the shared values. We're not those pushy, loud, hear me first, and I'm going to give it to you before midnight tonight and throw in those nuts. Give me your credit card and have your sister-in-law do that too. And I mean, that's not what our organizations are like. I'm sure that, you could go to, Times Square and get the carnival barker or the woman who's so pushy that she's chasing you down the aisles at the supermarket, which exists. But I don't think overall that culturally, it's about your values. And if you align women with the same values with people all across the globe, then none of that has to be the way. It can be a kind and gentle and supportive way. We don't have to compete. We can collaborate. We don't have to feel threatened. We don't have to say, don't buy hers, buy mine. We could say, buy hers. And if you ever need more, I'll be here to help you. You know?
Yeah, I do find Americans are much better, like you were saying, asking for help rather than kind of promoting what they have. So they're definitely better at their ask. And I would say that entrepreneurship as a whole is more accepted in the US. So over here, someone will say, oh, what do you do? I'll say, I will work for myself, or I very rarely say I run my own business. Or I'll say, oh, I run networking events. And then the very first thing someone will say is, that's brave of you.
I know.
Yeah, but it is brave.
Then you say, heck yeah, it is. I'm kicking butt at it. That's what you say.
You know, I mean, at the end of the day, to the point that you said about your other career, right? The safety and security of a paycheck is a comfort. It's a comfort, right?
But
and as long
there
as
is no safety.
Well, it feels that way while you're getting one.
Yeah, because look at what happened in COVID. People lost their jobs like this. Boom, boom, boom. So it, like you said, though, there is that perception that it's safe, but really, it's not.
To me, it's a lifestyle choice. You know, it's and I think actually COVID has helped with that. People can see that there is an opportunity there, rather than this is the way that we've always done it. This is the way we're always going to do it. Definitely.
And there's a lot of openness. I had done a lot of global retreats. I had done one. I said, you know, I met Ali in Spain. We had gone to Norway, met women entrepreneurs in Norway. We did a group in Ireland a couple of years back, which was phenomenal, in Cork. And we basically had kind of a Shark Tank experience. We're 12 women entrepreneurs from the US. Some of these women had very successful businesses, went to startup women entrepreneurs in Cork. And so in that area, they came from an agricultural background. They didn't have entrepreneurs, so these women had ideas, and they were very nervous and worried. And they spent a lot of time creating their pitches, and they pitched to us, and they pitched their business, and we chose a woman who had an idea, and we brought her over to the US, and we brought her to our events, and it was amazing how much it was similar. But I do, to your point, think they needed that muscle, because I think entrepreneurs in the US have started not in the last 20 years, but in the last 40 years, which is still not that long ago. But the first entrepreneurs came in the 70s, where I think maybe in Europe it started a little bit later. And so we're timely and a little bit more advanced in that way. But I think when an individual goes out to be an entrepreneur, it's that same fear factor.
What's the best 1 minute pitch that you've heard, that you both have heard, or what ones do you think really stand out for you?
I have one that I always remember, because I thought it was just, so I had a woman who was a home organizer. She would come in and organize your home. And her pitch was, I will wave my magic wand and let your clutter disappear.
Oh, I love it.
And I was like, who doesn't want that?
I love that.
I don't know if it's particularly appropriate, but there was a wills and probate lady that obviously did wills, and her catchphrase was "See me before you go." I still remember it years on.
Yeah,
you remember it.
Yeah, there we go.
Now I need to come up with something.
Well, apparently the best pitch is if you're consistently doing it by having a catchphrase at the end. It's just like that memory thing of constantly remembering what they do, and a bit of an enhancement. There we go. Susan, any particular ones that really stand out for you?
Man, none like that. I mean, I love the ones though that are on target, like short, sweet, and just clear. And I think that's one of the things that we get to do within Big, because we all practice our pitches all the time. Like, it's one of the things we all get the opportunity to introduce ourselves. And and it's fun to see how different people, but when they nail it, it's short, sweet, and clear.
Yeah.
But we call ourselves the guppy tank. We're not the shark tank. We're the guppy tank. We're gentle, and we just want to help you practice and feel comfortable.
It's brilliant. This kind of leads me nicely on to one of the last questions, is speed networking. So I ran my speed networking session on a couple of days ago because I can't remember. But one of the delegates said to me, you know what, it was a really great way of consistently practicing my pitch over and over and over again. I see that Big do some speed networking online. Susan, do you orchestrate that?
We all do. Mostly Tara.
We've done it for years. We did it before COVID. Zoom gives you another flavor of it.
Yeah,
we
do.
Probably do it a little differently than a lot of people out there, because we don't just have them pitch their elevator pitch over and over, because we feel like we have times when we do the guppy tank, that's when they pitch their elevator pitch. But our speed networking really does focus on getting to know each other, and usually it's on a theme. We break them into breakout rooms based on our themes. Our themes at Big, we help women on their entrepreneurial journeys, but we know that you can't be an entrepreneur if the rest of your life isn't in order. So we focus on a holistic approach to women. So we have topics on relationships and on home life and on travel and leisure and fun, so we can come visit you, and on health and wellness, as well as entrepreneur. So when we do our speed networking, there's always a theme. And so it's a guided speed networking. So it goes, go into the room for 15 minutes. We're going to break you out and talk about this, and have them share.
Like
and it can be so many wonderful things. Like, what's the biggest thing you've ever done that you're most proud of? Or what's the biggest struggle you've ever overcome in your life? And when you can put those, then you really get to know people.
Yeah, that's
really what I love is the one that we're like, what's one thing somebody doesn't know about you? You know, like,
so
people laugh.
Quite a few about that.
Yeah, like when I share that my first job was a butcher. I was a butcher for my first job at 15 years old. Like, people don't know that. Yeah,
interesting. Well, I just read a tip, of a person in a job interview when they say, so what? Tell me about yourself, right? And someone says, well, I want to he said the best answer he ever got was an interviewee who said, I've climbed every mountain in every 7 continents, the highest mountain in every 7 continents. That gives you a perception of that person well beyond her resume, well beyond her job, right? She's a go-getter. She's an adventurer. So getting to know, bottom line is, people do business with the people, not the products, not the services, and they want to do business with people they know, like, and trust. And so the fastest way that you can get to there, where people feel like they could trust you and they like you, we're trying to foster those.
Yeah. So my fun fact, I don't know what this says about me. I have 2 actually, but the one that you'll probably know about is I danced in the opening ceremony of the Paralympics in 2012 in London. Wow. And little did I know that I had such a serious in the game mode on the actual night that my picture was taken and used as a commemorative stamp. So you can literally lick my face now.
I would tell
that. I would too. That is awesome.
Look at that.
Yeah, there we go. So
wow.
Everyone should.
That is cool.
Very last question, Tara, a bit of tongue in cheek. So obviously, Big is a female organization. Do you get any men come along and say, "Come in allowed too"?
We have, and we're a very open platform, but we've had no one seriously. I have been asked in tongue in cheek to see if I could open an organization similar to Big for women, because they think men. For men, because men think a lot of what we're doing there. And my tongue in cheek answer, but then we would have to call it little. And only because of this reason. I don't want to be sexist in any way, but only because in our organization, we share very deeply and very emotionally and very vulnerably. And I think that's what bonds our membership together in a very deep, I mean, I have women who've been with us for 13 years, 14 years. I don't think men would be good in that environment. I don't think they let themselves be as vulnerable and as giving as they keep in their lane, they keep in their silo for business, and that's where it stays, where we bleed our lives together.
Yeah, I actually run a mixed networking group as well as I'm a member or a franchisee of Women in Business Network, and that's one of the questions I get quite often get asked, can I come along even though I'm a man? I was like, yes, of course. And then they come along and they absolutely hate it. I think, look, I think there's something for everybody. And I think men and women do network differently. It's just got a different vibe to it, really. So women will say something different in a women's only group than they will to a mixed one, and vice versa, actually.
Yes. And I mean, I have done, we say that our organization is an and, not an or. We shouldn't be your only place that you're putting your eggs to do your business. You should do, co networking events. You should do BNI. You should do all these other different ways. But we are a place that's a safe haven for women specifically. We have male speakers all the time. Evolved men, we like to say.
Marvelous. Well, thank you very much, both of you, today. It's been fantastic. Is it lunchtime where you are? Are you off to get some lunch?
Just about. You're going to dinner, right? We're going to lunch.
My 6-year-old son was just about to come back from swimming. There we are. Just after school. There we are. So thank you very much today for
thanks, Lizzie. We'll keep in touch and figure out how we can do things together.
Love to. There we go. I'm definitely coming on that invite.
Yes. Let us know.